the meeting tonight for the Bernie Township Board of Education. This will be the regular session. The board has already convened the regular session and held the salute to the flag, after which we were recessed into executive session and adjourned from that right before 7 o'clock, and now we are back to the public session. At this time, I would like to ask the business administrator, Mr. McLaughlin, to do the roll call.
Mr. Byrne? Here. Mrs. Horner?
Here.
Mrs. Gray? Here. Mrs. McGowan?
Here.
Mrs. Bridgman?
Here.
Mrs. Shaw?
Here.
Mrs. Woolridge?
Here.
Mr. Markarian? Here. Mr. Side? Here.
Here. Okay, just so everyone knows where I'm running tonight's meeting. As the chairperson, our president, Mrs. McEwen, is out of the state, and our vice president was also, Ms. Cusell was unable to attend tonight. So with both our president and vice president being absent, I was asked to chair tonight's meeting. So we are up to Item 6, the statement of public notice, which is printed on the agenda, which I would encourage everyone to read. And that I also want to remind everyone that tonight the meeting is being recorded. And with that, we are up to Item 7, and tonight we have a student representative, and we have Jad Suleiman.
Abby Slayman.
What, say that again?
Abby Slayman.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's tricky. Yeah, my name is, it says Andy Pearson, but my name is Jad Abby Slayman. I'm the Ridge High School Student Government Treasurer. I'm just here to inform you all on some Ridge High School happenings, I suppose. And then if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Currently, we have a sophomore class food drive going on, and those proceeds will be collected before the Christmas break. This past weekend, one club hosted the annual turkey drive, where most community members are welcome to bring canned foods and non-perishable food items that will be donated to the Somerset County Food Bank. We just started, the student government just started the teddy bear drive, where students are welcome to pick up teddy bears for free and decorate them and bring them back by December 11th. And those will be donated to various children's hospitals and shelters throughout Somerset County. Not much going on, but if I think of anything in the next 10 seconds, I'll let you know.
That sounds good. Are there any questions for Jad?
I just have a quick question. Where did you pick up the teddy bears? My daughter didn't know for that.
The teddy bears are available during all lunch periods, which is 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, right in front of the cafeteria. There will be a student government representative there ready to hand them out. All you have to do is fill out a slip with your name, your phone number, and when you plan on bringing it back. We do have a deadline then. It's only encouraged to write down when you'll be bringing it back.
Thank you.
And it is free of charge. You don't have to pay anything for the teddy bears.
Okay, thank you very much for giving us that update, and you are welcome to stay for the meeting, or you can be excused to do other activities. So.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you.
Take my leave.
Okay, with that, we are up to Item 8, and tonight we have a public hearing on a bond refunding that the board is undertaking, and we have with us Ms. Lisa Gorab, who is our bond counsel, and I would like to have her please come forward to the microphone, and if you could update the board and discuss what this referendum is about. Yeah, refunding, not referendum. Yes.
Do you want to join us since we have plenty of seats?
Okay. What this resolution is about for the bond refunding. Sorry, on the spot.
the great opportunity to refund several of its bonds. It's like a refinancing of your mortgage. The one proposed this evening is a refinancing of the 2023 to 2030 maturities of the 2007 bonds. That's about $5,855,000 worth of bonds. So what the resolution does is authorizes new bonds to refinance the old bonds, and the new bonds will be at lower interest rates. So the old bonds are about 4.28%. We anticipate the new bonds to be at about 3%. So you'd be paying less interest. We anticipate the savings to be between $200,000 and $300,000. Of course, the maturity of the bonds is not being extended. It's being paid off in due course. We're really just enabling the board to pay less interest over time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I would like to have a motion on this resolution, and then it will be on the floor, and if anyone has any questions for Ms. Gorab, we'll have them from the board members then. So right now, could I have a motion to move item 1 on the approval of the bond refunding? Preeti, thank you. Could I have a second, please? Linda, thank you. Okay, are there any questions for Ms. Gorab? From the board. Mike?
Could you explain when these would go to bid?
Yes. When the interest rate will be struck?
Yeah, could you go tomorrow morning, or do you have to?
No, we can't go tomorrow morning. After the board takes its action, a document called an official statement needs to be put together. That's the last form of a disclosure document for the marketplace. There was a competitive process for the underwriter on these transactions. RBC Capital Markets was most advantageous to the board, so they are going to be underwriting the bonds pursuant to the resolution. We need to obtain a rating on the bonds. The district enjoys a very high rating. We want that rating confirmed. And then we would be able to strike the interest rate on the bonds. So we're going to move as quickly as possible because rates are very low. But if those savings cannot be obtained, the bond issue doesn't go forward and there are no costs. So we hope to maybe be out in December in the marketplace.
And in December?
In December at some time. It depends on the rating process, really, how long that takes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Preeti?
If you have a better rate, go with better rate.
Oh, absolutely. And the board has a financial advisor whose job it is, because we, as lawyers, you as board members, can't negotiate interest rates on these bonds. We're not in the marketplace every day. So your financial advisor, that is Phoenix Advisors, negotiates very hard for the board on the sale of the lowest interest rate. They compare different refinancing and bond issues that have gone on that day. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to remind everyone, this resolution does include the appointment of the underwriter in one of these provisions. Section 2?
Yes, that's section 2.
Which is page 6.
Section 2, page 6. It does include the appointment of the underwriter. Okay. If there are no more questions from the board, we're going to move to item 10, which is public comment only on the bond refunding at this time, because we are in the public hearing on the bond refunding. So if any member of the public has a comment on the bond refunding, please step forward and you can write your name on the clipboard and state your name and address, and I will open that up now. Nobody? Okay, I'm going to, oh, Doug, yes.
Douglas Wicks. What is that advisor cost?
I don't know the exact fee,
Approximately.
maybe 15,000. That savings number that I gave you is net of all cost of issuance.
What is about $16,000?
Approximately, I think, I'm not certain. Thank
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment on bond refunding, which brings us to item 11. Could I have a roll call on the bond refunding, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Mrs. Swerner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray? Mrs. McGowan?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Wolford?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, Ms. Gaurav, if you could please remain for a few moments. And we have a later addendum coming up in our finance section, which is on the resolution for disclosure for the Securities and Exchange Commission. Would you be able to please explain that addendum and the questionnaire answer number 5 to the board now?
Yes, this is a nationwide initiative that the SEC is conducting. The initiative is to, for lack of a better word, have an amnesty program for any issuers who believe that there may have been a misstatement in an official statement containing continuing disclosure. Let me break that down, and I'll try to be brief because I know you have a lot on tonight. Every time you issue debt, you undertake an obligation to provide annual financial information to repositories. Why? So that in the secondary market, if someone wants to buy your bonds, they can just go to the repository and see your CAFRA and your financial statements and your rating and all that information and make their own decision. And every year the board files its information. And the board has filed its information, and we believe all the information is complete that the board has filed. Recently, the board has hired Phoenix Advisors to provide this service for the board. I think the cost is about $650 a year. It's an inexpensive service that we've recently hired them for. One of the other items that issuers are required to report is material events. And those would be things that a bondholder would want to know about: defaults, rating changes, things like that. You and the SEC is looking back 5 years. You have 2 issues in those 5 that fall within that 5-year period: a 2012 issue and a 2013 issue. And what this amnesty program is, it says if you think that your language doesn't line up perfectly with your history, here's your chance. File self-report as part of this amnesty program. The SEC will enter into a settlement agreement with you and provide some administrative requirements that have to be met annually. So what this resolution does is authorize a review to be done of what your compliance was and what your official statement said about your compliance. Phoenix has done that review for you. And it has shown that you are generally what you've said in your official statements is materially accurate and reflects your filing. There's one little tricky aspect of this, and a material event would be if a bond insurer that insured your bonds had a change in its rating. So a third-party bond insurer had a change in its rating. The obligation would have been on the board to send that notice into the repository. Well, the difficulty is you don't know that. How would you know that? When Phoenix is hired, they have Bloomberg terminals on their desk, so they know when an insurance company gets downgraded. They would let your business administrator know and tell him we're filing on your behalf. That's their job now. But you do have bonds. I think they were your 2007 series, which is being refunded now, and 2005 series and 2002 series that actually had an insurance company which, in the financial crisis of 2008, was downgraded. The insurance company was downgraded. Your rating is higher than the insurance company. So this is not a credit issue, but it's just a mere reporting issue that you didn't know to report. So what we believe it would be prudent for the board to file as part of the amnesty program and say, we didn't know about these. So having not been given notice, we could not give notice. But it was widely known in the investment community and in the underwriting community about these downgrades. Because these are the insurers that insure municipal bonds that community is involved with. So it was not a material misstatement. I would say of the 570 school districts in the state, 570 have not filed these notices. This was common. People were not focusing on this. So many districts are becoming part of this amnesty program. So what this resolution does is allow you to participate in that program. I drafted question 5, which is an opportunity for the board to say to the SEC, this is why his statements are not material. When this report gets submitted, there's 2 things that can happen. The SEC could say, we agree with you, this isn't material, it was widely known in the marketplace, not an issue, no action. Or the SEC could say, we're going to admit you into the amnesty program, and Mr. McLaughlin, every year we want you to send us a certificate that says you're in compliance. We want to make sure you hire someone or adopt policies to make sure that this is done every year. So there's administrative checklists as part of the amnesty program, but certainly no SEC enforcement, no financial penalties to the board or anything like that. Many issuers, I dare to say almost all issuers in New Jersey are participating.
Just one point I want to clarify. You indicated that we recently retained Phoenix. They've been retained in that capacity since 2012.
Okay,
So it's a little more than recent.
and you've been current since 2012.
Yeah.
So,
That's why we retained this.
yes.
It sounds like a very cost-effective service. All right, since Ms. Grab might not be available later on, I'm going to open it up for any board members who have questions for her on this addendum when it's moved later in the finance agenda. So does anyone have questions for her on this and question 5? Answer? No? Okay. Thank you very much. That was a really thorough explanation. All right, with that, we're moving on to item 12, which is board presentation, and we have a presentation on the PARCC assessment and technology. If the board members could move down to the audience to view the presentation. And we'll start that now. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. Seems the Board of Education picked a good topic for tonight's presentation on PARCC. A lot of interest, which is fantastic. Welcome. I'm Brian Heineman, the District Director of Curriculum Instruction. With me tonight, I have Mr. Matt Hall, our District Supervisor of Science and Technology, as well as our District Testing Coordinator, and Mr. Chris Barone, our Director of IT. So our goal for tonight is really to give you an overview of what we have done so far with PARCC in the district, but also things we have heard and accumulated from all the visits we have done around the county, around the state, and online, gathering information about PARCC as we prepare for the March administration. So to kick things off, I'll hand it over to Mr. Hall.
Good evening, everyone. So PARCC. PARCC being the the Partnership for the Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers. So what we know so far about PARCC, it's the new state assessment system. It's not just New Jersey state assessment system. It has become one of 2 national assessment systems that are in practice for assessing the Common Core state standards. So our implementation and the students' achievement of these standards in both English language arts and mathematics. It will be a computer-based assessment, which means that the students will be taking this on a computer rather than, as we're used to with the NJASC and the HESPA, a paper-based. It will be administered to students in grades 3 through 11. And this will replace the New Jersey ASC and the HESPA starting this year. Okay? The science assessments that we currently administer in New Jersey in the form of the New Jersey ASC and the New Jersey biology competency test will continue as they have been in the past, as a paper-based assessment. Okay, so a quick comparison of our former state assessment system, New Jersey ASC and HESPA, versus the PARCC. The former system was administered to students in grades 3 through 8, as well as grade 11. It was English language arts and mathematics, and then science in 4th and 8th grade. It was paper-based, administered once a year, and recently was aligned to the Common Core state standards, with a variety of assessment item types, including multiple choice, short response, and open-ended items. So how does PARCC differ? Well, we mentioned before that it is computer-based. It will be administered to students in grades 3 through 11, so that's additional 9th grade and 10th grade administration. English language arts and mathematics, PARCC will not include a science component. And it will also be Common Core line. And it's administered in 2 parts rather than 1 part. So we're going to have an earlier, what's called a performance-based assessment. So when you see on the screen where it says PBA, that stands for a performance-based assessment. And then an end-of-year component. And that's the EOY that is printed up here. So the item types are very similar. There are multiple choice item types. There are short answer, short constructed response type answers, open-ended in mathematics, and then we have in language arts what they call prose constructed responses, which from your experience are the kinds of questions we call essay questions. So a lot of essay writing in there. So very similar item types. The format's different, it's computer-based. The degree of complexity of the items is, we're anticipating the PARCC items are going to be significantly more complex. Okay, so why PARCC? Why did the state transition to PARCC? Why are some of the states transitioning to PARCC? The PARCC assessment promises to do a better job than our current assessment system at measuring the full range of student achievement. Each year we come up here in October and we talk about how did Bernards Township students do on the state testing. And one of the things we see time and time again is that we're not able to really compare our children to the state numbers and things like that, because students in this community do very, very well on the state assessment. So they hit that achievement level, but we're never really sure how much past that can they do. So the ceiling on those assessments has been, for a community like this, has been very low. So one of the promises of PARCC is that it will do a better job of measuring the full range of how well students are achieving relative to the Common Core state standards, that English language arts and mathematics. So the assessment is also designed for higher expectations, I mentioned before, in that those Common Core state standards, as well as college and career readiness. So there have been much feedback, which has been highly, it's been in the media quite a bit, about how do our children do here in the United States when compared internationally, on various studies and things like that. And are they ready for for college. And many students go to college and they have to take remedial courses before they can begin their first year coursework. So one of the goals of the Common Core State Standards was to increase that readiness level for college, for careers, and the PARCC assessment system is intended to measure that. As a computer-based test, there is a promise of us being able to get results much faster. So currently, when students take their state tests, we don't see the scores for that until typically late August or September. PARCC promises to have those scores to us much earlier. Although we've been told this year, because they haven't set the cuts yet, we're not going to see the PARCC results for the first year of administration until likely October. So perhaps in the future we'll see that to be different. And another advantage would be, since this is a national assessment, multiple states will be administering it, we will be able to compare the performance of our students here in this community with a larger pool of students nationally. And when students move in from other states, it will be easier for us to gauge what the readiness level is, which courses are they prepared for. Yeah. Okay, so expectations. So I mentioned before that the PARCC assessment is broken into a language arts component, or literacy component, and then a mathematics component. So what are the expectations? So as far as language arts, students being able to read complex texts, that's one of the expectations. They need to be able to write effectively to sources. So meaning they're going to have various passages that they're responding to. When they're answering questions, they're responding to evidence that is in various passages that they'll be presented with. And they'll be able, there's actually a research component where they'll build and present an analysis of their research based on some text that they're given during the assessment. And so we'll go through and you can see some of these questions later on. In mathematics, students are going to need to solve problems relating to content and mathematical practices. They need to be able to reason mathematically. Modeling is emphasized, and modeling real-world problems using mathematics is emphasized to a greater degree, and essentially be fluent mathematically. So what will this look like? So there's a lot going on this slide, so I'll walk us through it. So I mentioned before that the PARCC assessment has two parts. So we know this year the PARCC assessment will be broken into a performance-based component, which will be administered in the window of March 2nd through 27th, and then an end-of-year component, end-of-year assessment, which will be administered between April 22nd and May 27th. So this is intended to be the 75% of the way through the school year, 95% of the way through the school year. Although, I mentioned before, this is national, and school years are not the same all over the country. So in many places, the school year starts earlier. So this is the window that exists for all of the states participating in PARCC. So in some places, starting next year, there will also be a speaking and listening assessment. This is recently, we've been told that the speaking and listening component will not be factored into the summative score of PARCC, and it's up to each state to decide whether or not they're going to administer that. And as far as we know, New Jersey is still in the policy setting stages for that. So there has been no official word on whether or not we will have that here. There are also, not this year, but in subsequent years, there will be two optional components, these teal-colored ones here, a beginning of the year diagnostic assessment, and then a mid-year assessment for school districts that opt to participate in that. So those will not be required. A required component or the performance-based and the end of year. Okay. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Allen.
Okay, so Mr. Hall gave us a little bit of an overview as to what we know about PARCC, some of the history of it. I'm going to continue with kind of what are we doing right now? What is the setup for the first and second administration as we have laid it out in the district now? The first thing is the performance-based assessment, the what. So what sections are we talking about? We might be used to NJS and have our children at home tell us about what they worked on that day, and of course that's all going to change. So I will preface what I'm saying with, this is the best information we have as of today. We expect better information in January. That was told to us as recently as the meeting last week, where we knew there would be some updates with PARCC coming in January. So everything I'm telling you is based upon information we have as of today. So we have 3 units in English language arts. We have a literary analysis unit, a research and simulation, and a narrative writing unit. Now they might seem like new titles, but in a second I'm going to go through some question types, and you'll be able to see comparisons from one to the other, to see how the NJS version of the question relates to the PARCC version of the question. In mathematics, they were not as crafty in the titling, they just called them Unit 1 and Unit 2. So whereas the LA gave them very interesting titles, mathematics said Unit 1, Unit 2, maybe we should have expected that from mathematics folks. There are calculator active and calculator inactive sessions. So for the first unit you see in mathematics, you'll notice it has both. Okay, so when the calculator is available, it will present that to the student. And for the second unit, the entire section is calculator active. So that's the what. So what is the when? Now you should have some familiarity with this. This was sent home in October. We sent home dates for our administrations. This is just reflective of that. You will see there is some overlap in each school, and we do have a window to work with. Right? So the district had a set of dates, a beginning and an end, and our task was to administer the test within that window. Okay? So within that, we had to look at our staffing, our room utilization, number of technology devices we had, bandwidth in each building. Okay? All of those were concerns. Also, IT support personnel. How many IT staff do we have available if there were technology glitches? So based on all those things, we tried to set forth the best schedule we could. We found out late in the game that actually we will be allowed to do what they call test stacking. Right? So you'll notice there's one here where there's a stacked test. That means a student can take 2 tests in one day. So when we first found out about this, they said, only 1 test in a day, that's all a student can take. And then about a month ago, I think it was, they came back to us and said, well, you can stack 1 test on top of another, and have 2 in a day. So these are all things you have to measure out. Is it challenging for a student to take 2 tests in one day? Will that hurt their performance and their scores? These are all questions that are difficult to answer when you're trying to plan this, because there has not been a live administration of PARCC testing. So no one has seen this test. No one has sat down for a full administration of it. So we really have nothing to go on aside from some practice tests and information that we've been focused. Right? So it's a pretty tall order to make really good decisions, database decisions on what we have. You'll notice there are some delays. Most of them are pretty clear. The tricky one might be reach high. So if you notice, it works out like this. If you are testing that day, you have a regular school schedule. You go to school in the morning like normal. If you're not testing that day, you will have a delay. So that is pretty much how it's laid out. If a student is taking a test that day, they're going to school on a regular schedule. If they're not testing that day, they have a delayed opening schedule. Okay? And there'll be more information to that as we get closer to the March administration. So the EOI, or the end of the year segment, you'll notice this is a little shorter. Right? It's fewer days. The ELA portion, there was a Unit 1 section. Now they weren't crafted the name of this one. That is for grades 3 through 11. And you'll notice Unit 2 excludes the elementaries, right? So there's only a single one for the elementaries. And then once again, mathematics is broken into Unit 1 and Unit 2 with calculator active and calculator inactive sessions. So now we're looking forward to the end of April for this window to open. So it's the end of April till the end of May. This window was changed about a month and a half ago based upon AP testing. So the state came back again and said, well, you thought about it, we're going to change it again. And then you have another switching schedule. You could bounce it around. Here's a different set of weeks. So we had to go back and tweak it again because they wanted to try to dodge AP testing for our high school students as best as we were able. Very similar. Okay, you'll see that we did, you might ask the question, why do we go with grades 5, 4, and 3? That was a decision we made as a district based upon the layout of mathematical content for the elementary schools. We felt that the 5th graders would have the required material earlier, okay, so they were scheduled first, and 3rd graders would need a little more time to cover the material that PARCC told us they need to have in time for that assessment. That's for both the PBA and the BOE. So, now I'm going to show you some item types. If you have been to past PTO presentations, past board presentations, some last May we did one, talked a little bit about PARCC. You may have seen some of these item types. We try to switch the item types around to give you a little variety. Once again, this is all we have to work with, so I do apologize if it's somewhat limited because PARCC has not released anything new recently. They are gearing up for a kind of big pre-test release in January, and they're kind of holding their cards until then. So until then, this is what we have to go with. So I'll show you some comparative between NJS and PARCC. I apologize for people in the back. This will be online, so if you have difficulty reading some of the text, it will be available for you. This is an elementary NJS reading and literature question. Very straightforward. These are all samples taken from parent guides, so these are accessible online, everything I'm showing you. And you see a student reads a passage, and very, very simply, okay, what is the theme of this passage? The straightforward multiple choice question, right? Read the passage, select the answer that states the theme. Now, something similar in the literature piece of PARCC. You can see they once again have the passage, so that doesn't look too different yet. But let's look at the question. The question says, which statement best expresses one of the themes of our story? Right? So it's not the theme, one of the themes of our story. And which detail from the story provides the best evidence for that? So now pick the theme and pick evidence from the story that supports your theme. So you see a little bit, as Mr. Hall mentioned, we think a little bit more challenging of a problem, a little more complex for students to analyze. They can't simply guess at that first one. Even if they guess, they now have to find out how to support that with their second answer. This is grade 4 elementary school. So here's another example. This is the PARCC literary analysis essay. So that was a multiple choice version, and now we have a written portion. And you can see up here, these things should look pretty familiar to you, right? That's something you might have seen from like Microsoft Word or something like that. Just simple text editors where students can bold, indent, or bullet point things. Now, that's especially something we're not sure what it will look like. They have told us, based upon feedback from the pilot test that we did in spring, they're going to make adjustments to the word editor and also the equation editor in mathematics. So we're not quite sure what the final product will look like. We make a pretty good guess. That's going to be something that has symbolism that kids are used to from other, word processing products.
And what grade is that?
This is the same. This is also, yes. So this one here, the interesting thing about this, and this is some of the things you can do with a computer-based test that are a little bit more, interesting, I guess, the way you can set it up, is that you have these tabs here, right? So now the students are going to read one story, go to the next tab, read another story, answer questions about one, answer questions about another, and then answer questions that want them to pick up upon both stories. Okay, so that's kind of the level of complexity. Once again, it's a little bit different. So here's back to NJS now. Okay, this is an argument writing prompt. And really straightforward. This is just a writing task. Use the information you know to pose an argument. Right? Whatever you know, you can use. Right? Use that as your evidence. So the students are given nothing else besides whatever knowledge they walk into the room with. Now, if you look at something similar, now they have different titles, but this is kind of the closest parallel we can draw, we think, based on what NJS and PARCC look like. This is what was called the research simulation task. And you might have seen that, Mr. Hall's going through the slides. Research simulation task is one of these new item types. And what it does is, instead of saying whatever you come into the room with is what you work with for your persuasive essay, we're going to give you several pieces of information. So we're going to give you 2 stories and actually a video. So you might have heard that students will need headphones right when they're going through this test. One of the reasons for the headphones is that they will be reading a passage, then reading another passage, and then there'll be a short video that plays, giving them information. And they need to make use of those 3 resources to answer the question. Okay? And basically, it asks them to consider an argument each author uses to demonstrate Amelia Earhart's bravery, and once again, they will put that in the box here. So it has the details that they have to write about in their research on those 2 pieces of writing and the video. Okay, once again, just an example. This is, no, this is middle school. This is middle school prom. Do they have time on this? Yes, their time is like,
Hey, Brian, you take public comment after the presentation, so the board answers their questions. You can
Absolutely.
Get to public forum on agenda items. You can follow up, you can answer their questions then.
very good. Okay, so next is HASPA. So now we're on to high school. That was the middle school portion. Now on to high school. And for HASPA, this is remember 11th grade. We have a reading passage and then some questions that relate to the experience of the telescope has a profound effect on the one needle and Corey, and then some questions they needed to answer in a written response. What does that look like in the literary analysis piece on PARCC? We see now we don't have a single text. We have data to Nicholas and to a friend and related text. So now you're not writing your essay about a text. You're reading two related texts and trying to, if you look at this, trying to develop a claim based upon the relationship between those two texts. So that's clearly a more complex task for a student than the prior prompt that I showed you. Okay, so these are some, once again, these are all available online. These are not hidden or secret. These are all things that are out there for both PARCC and NJS. What I try to do is just give you the best comparison we could. So now on to mathematics. So down at 4th grade NJS, pretty straightforward. It was right from the 2014 parent handbook. A 4th grade prompt, and then a 4th grade version on PARCC. So you can look real quick. That's pretty straightforward, right? You're going to shade these boxes, okay, and then which fraction is greater is linear. And in here, we have a little more complexity, and probably one of the most tricky things that you'll notice about math that we have concerns over as a district, as instructional leaders, is how do we get students to be able to use the equation editor, but it's not a tool they don't have everyday access to. And that's what this is. This is called an equation editor, right? So you can actually put in symbols, put in numbers, and work through equations that you develop on your own. It's a powerful tool, but once again, it's something that I think everybody, education in general, is concerned about, making sure students are familiar enough with that, which is why we're very anxious for the practice tests in January to come around when they're working through this. Now, the people at PARCC did say, and the state did say, that one of their concerns as well was this and how students dealt with this, right? So if you think back to that pilot test that we did in the spring, a lot of the results of that, they didn't provide anything for us. They provided information from PARCC to say, well, what did the kids have problems with? Where do we see issues? Can we solve those issues? This was one of those things, and they did say they were going to reformat this equation editor. What does that mean? We're not quite sure. We hope it'll be more clear. We hope it'll be easy for the kids to access, but we really won't know until we have January rolls around and see the version. So continuation, see this one develops a little more. This is the entire question here. And this question develops you have a part A, right? How many B's did name interest you proceed? Explain it. Okay, explain it using mathematical language. And then a follow-up for that question as well. Okay. So grade 6, now in middle school, here's an NJS sample problem. Once again, pretty straightforward, right? The expression is not equivalent. You can pick, it's simple multiple choice. And a little more complex, in part, not tremendously so, but this is saying pick all expressions that are equivalent to that the one at the top. Right? Equivalent expressions, check every box that's equivalent. Here's more on 6th grade, so still in middle school. We have kind of a comparison problem, a ratio problem. We're talking about the number of brass instrument players to percussion instrument players. Enter your answer in the box. And then once again, what was kind of unique in part is there's many more follow-ups. Now you have a part B, that question has that equation editor again. So right, we ask that introductory question, and then we ask for follow-up and development of the next question. That's pretty common in what we've seen with PARCC. Now once again, that is what we've seen with PARCC thus far. None of this is official. We don't really know exactly what item types or questions would be like. This is our best guess as of today. And the last one, this is now high school. It has some sample item. We have, once again, simple multiple choice. What inequalities represented there. And compare that to something similar that we'll see, I think we'll see in PARCC. This is where you have some of the power of technology being leveraged to give you a more kind of interesting, I think, item. You have options to create lines and set your solution, okay, on the computer, and set that as your solution for the answer to the question. So it's a little bit more interesting and, of course, more challenging for that portion of the test. So those are some sample items. Like I said, there's many more online you could look at. You could look forward to January, so here are some of the things that we know are coming. We know we have the practice tests coming. We will have an updated student interface. That means that things like the equation editor, the writing editor, all those things will be changed. To what? None of us know yet. We're still waiting to see exactly what the word will be on those. They say improved based upon the pilot testing in the spring, so we hope that's the case. We'll be training for building and district coordinators, so that's Mr. Hall, as well as all the coordinators in our buildings throughout the district. There's official training for them, and also access to a PARCC training website. So part of what happens with the administration of computer-based testing is you have to get all of your student population and get them into the database, right, for the assessment. We do something similar to paper tests now, but now, of course, it's all computerized. Part of what we'll be able to do is build in a training database of practice students so that we can have kids working on live practice tests prior to PARCC. Now, that's a very tight window. You say, Brian, it's January, you're testing, like a month and a half after that, right? Yeah, that's the case. So part of what we've talked about as a team, the administrative team, is how do we get prepared so that as soon as PARCC has it available to us, we're ready to have the kids start practicing with these new item types and this new system. So to maximize that time we have before the test takes place. And finally, in March, this will be the first live demonstration of the PARCC computer-based testing for us and every other school district that is utilizing PARCC as their assessment. So I'll hand it back over to Mr. Hall for a little bit of discussion on accessibility.
Thank you, Dr. Hartman. Okay, so looking at this computer-based test, it affords some advantages that we don't see in paper-based assessment. So the folks who designed the PARCC assessment recognize that all students are not the same person and they learn differently and express themselves differently. So they built in, they have what they call a universal test design, and they built in a lot of ways for students to exercise their own choice to use various tools to better answer questions and use the test. So really what they have, this graphic shows that there are really three different types of modifications to the test type, or to the testing experience, and this would be the best way to say this, for the students, some of which are for all students, some are for students who have a particular learning need that's identified in advance, and then some accommodations that are specifically designed to assist students who have learning disabilities or maybe a physical disability, or maybe English isn't their first language. So let's see what some of these are. So features for all students. So these are things that any individual student can, with their own choice, they can take advantage of things like audio amplification. They're able to request as much blank paper as they need to take notes. Dr. Heinemann mentioned before, students will be presented with videos, with various writing passages, so they can take notes on paper, do pre-writing, plan, and things like that. The ability to eliminate answer choices, to just sort of mark through those so they go away. That's something that students could do on a paper test, but you don't really think when it comes time to take a test on a computer, how do you do that? That's built right in. Highlighting tools, being able to flag a question to come back to it. Like, I'm not really sure about this one, I'm going to go on, and then easily I can come back to it. Clarification of directions. Any student is permitted to use headphones, either to listen to any sort of audio that's part of the assessment, or just to block out, noise in the room, the fidgeting and pen tapping kinds of things. There's a line reading tool that they can bring up to help them when they're reading a passage on the screen. Magnification, up to 500 times magnification. We will be using Google Chromebooks, and so on a Chromebook in Chrome OS, it's a 500x. That differs per platform. They have a notepad that they can make use of. Pop-up glossary for certain words, not every word, but certain words that will pop up. You may have seen that if you have a Kindle or something like that. You may be familiar with that type of thing. Attention redirection, that's not a computer-based thing. That means that the proctor in the room, if somebody's staring at the ceiling or out the window, can go over and say, hey, don't forget you're taking a test. And writing tools, we saw that before, those word processing type writing tools like bold, italic, cut, paste, those sorts of things. And students are allowed to use external spell check devices as long as they're not web connected. So we, sort of scratch our head and think about what that is. It sounds a lot like a dictionary to me. Okay, so that's a feature that any student can use any of these features. So when we talk about practice with the test, one of the things that, I know we all worry about test prep and how much instruction will be lost in test prep. One of the things we want to make sure students are familiar with how to use the tools, right? So this is a new way of taking a test, and we want to make sure that they're at least familiar with the tools and how to use those before they go in there. So that's something that, as educational leaders in the district, we're looking at how do you balance that without losing instructional time. Okay, accessibility features that any child can use, but it needs to be identified that this is a need in advance, because we have to go and make it a special test form that they take. So those are things like answer masking. So that means that it's blocked out, the answer choices are blocked out when they read the question, and then they can reveal them. So for certain students, that's a strategy that they use with success, and this would be something that one of their teachers would say ahead of time, hey, this is something that would be advantageous for this child, so you should turn that feature on for them. Color contrast. If a white screen with black font is not the best way for them to take the test, there are other options. So, and we've seen some of the samples, you could have a blue screen with purple font, those kinds of things. Again, this is something that, most kids, they don't care what the contrast looks like. But if it matters, then that's a possibility. Text to speech. So having the computer basically read the questions aloud to them while they read along. That's something that we can enable, and another reason why they would bring headphones with them. And then a human reader or signer for students who need that. Okay? So these are accessibility features identified in advance. And then there are accommodations for, I mentioned before, students who have special education needs, who have a physical disability, a 504 accommodation plan, ELL. There are many accommodations that students can have for this testing experience, that they basically fall into one of three categories. A presentation accommodation, so this is Braille, large print, so those would be paper versions. They can have versions that are in American Sign Language. If they have a tactile graphic reader that can hook into the computer, those sorts of things, or tactile graphics that go wrong, electronic Braille reader, there are all kinds of ways that they can have a presentation accommodation. Response accommodations would be things like a Braille note taker for the child, calculation devices, speech to text, and then there are timing or scheduling accommodations. These would be things like extended time, a small group, those sorts of things. Okay, so we are presenting a lot of information, and we know that folks have many questions. There are some resources that you can go to for more information. Again, this presentation will be posted so that if you don't have something to take notes on now and you want to find out more information, you certainly can access this information. The PARCC website is a great place to go to find out about PARCC, how it was developed, what the organization behind PARCC is about. The New Jersey Department of Education has a PARCC page, which is specifically about New Jersey's implementation of PARCC and New Jersey policy relating to PARCC. The Common Core Standards Initiative, or Common Core State Standards Initiative, don't forget PARCC is a tool for measuring students' achievement of the Common Core State Standards. So that's really going straight to the source. And of course, our own district's testing website, where we put information that's relevant to our children here. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Barone, our Director of IT, to talk about technology. Thank you, Mr. Hall.
evening, everyone. So as Mr. Hall and Dr. Heineman have talked about over and over again, PARCC is essentially a computer-based assessment. And so one of the very early challenges that we had set for us was basically, currently, is our infrastructure able to handle it? Do we have enough desktop machines? Do we need to take a look at buying laptops? Do we want to take a look at buying iPads or possibly Chromebooks? All of these things we kind of had to factor in, and we also had to factor it into the 20-day testing window. So what we ended up doing is we ended up deciding to take a look and purchase Chromebooks. Now, the reason why we purchased Chromebooks is, one, the obvious, they're a PARCC-approved testing device. They provide much easier test administration. Another couple nice features is they boot up very quickly. They have extremely long battery life. This is one of the concerns that we have with a lot of the wireless devices, is how long are they going to last the entire day. A Chromebook can last a full 8 hours. They run a Chrome operating system, and they are very affordable. Now, I actually brought one with me here tonight just to kind of give everyone an idea of what they look like. I don't know if anyone's seen a Chromebook. This is essentially what we want. Do you mind opening this? Sure. Thank you, Mr. Hall. Now, as Mr. Hall will demonstrate here, is you can open it up and you turn it on, and if you kind of see the tiny screen, it's literally 8 seconds, and you can go and log into the Chromebook. So one of the major features that we really liked about the Chromebook was exactly this. There's not a whole lot of waiting time. You just turn them on, and you're ready to log in and begin your day. So the district set out and purchased 1,600 Chromebooks for PARCC testing. On top of that, the PTO generously donated 360 devices. And I would like to thank the PTO tonight for the generous donations. So essentially what we have now is 1,960 devices total that are in the district. The way that they were broken down is there's 500 district devices in the Bridge, there's 500 district Chromebooks in Lynn Manning, and then there's 150 district Chromebooks per elementary school. Now that doesn't include the PTO donated Chromebooks, which vary per elementary school depending on the ground. So we took a look at the Chromebooks, and then we asked ourselves, well, Chromebooks is a nice piece of technology. Well, where can we use this outside of PARCC testing? We don't want to basically purchase this device and let it sit for 6-7 months out of the year and only be used for basically a 2-month window. So Chromebooks are actually a very viable educational tool. They help us provide a 21st century classroom and build 21st century skill sets. What a 21st century classroom is essentially you take your core curriculum and then you intertwine technology with it, and you help build collaborative skills and critical thinking skills, and then essentially at the end of the day you have a real life skills that they can use in the workforce. Things as I mentioned before, they're fast to boot up. And another nice feature that I'm going to talk about in a second is they seamlessly integrate with Google Apps. Google Apps is a cloud-based platform that the Chrome OS is built upon, and it's something that we're taking a look at moving to in the future here. So essentially, at the end of the day, PARCC really has provided better technology for us in the classroom, something that we really haven't seen before, and something that we're very excited to talk about. So, another thing I want to talk about is Chromebook usage. Currently, the Chromebooks are being used on a day-to-day basis. One of the challenges that we had is we wanted to record the usage over a period of time. We want to make sure that they're being used properly, and if they are being used, we want to take a look at how often. So we basically have 2 methods of doing so. They're both digital. One is a Google Calendar sign-out, which essentially a teacher can go in, they can reserve a block of time, when they want to take a cart, they can physically select the cart as a resource, and then have that cart for that block of time. They can either do it by day, they can do it by period, they can do it per week. Another way that we're accomplishing this is actually digitally through a Google spreadsheet, and at the high school, they will break it down by blocks of class periods. They can essentially go in there and schedule it out per period. So on to Google Apps. We had purchased Chromebooks, and we had started taking a look at the usefulness, and we wanted to build this 21st century classroom. And one of the key features of this is Google Apps. Google Apps, as I mentioned before, it's a cloud-based application system. It helps us provide that collaboration piece that we've really been missing before. It's not only collaborative, but it's engaging. And the engagement also helps you define and build an authentic audience. So students are able to work on a project collaboratively at the same time. You can have multiple people working on a PowerPoint presentation. You can have multiple students working on a Word document. They can go in, they can comment, they can edit that document all at the same time. So we thought that this was just a very wonderful platform to help kind of infuse this new technology that we have in the district and bring it into the classroom and put it into your pupils' hands. Another nice feature that the technology department really likes about it, it's basically you use it any place, anytime. One of the challenges that we have is accessibility after hours. How does a student get onto the network drive? With Google Apps, you're using a Google-based platform. So as long as you have internet at home, you can essentially log in and continue to do what you're doing in class. One of the things that's good about that, it's online, it's browser-based. So what that means, you can use it on any type of platform. It works on Mac, it works on PC, it works on Linux, it works on an Android phone, it works on an Apple phone. You can basically use it on anything. So this brings me to our next slide here is kind of our Google vision. We had intertwined this technology, we had talked about bringing in, now we have these Chromebooks here. We're slowly building this Google Apps sort of district, and now we're taking a look at kind of doing a big step forward. One of our first initial steps that we're talking about in the next 6 to 12 months is getting us off of our legacy email system and moving us to Gmail. What this means, it provides better flexibility for teacher and student interaction. It also provides a little bit of ease on the technology department trying to maintain such a large email system. Everything is actually hosted by Gmail, which is a wonderful thing. Staff and student drives will then be migrated to Google Drive. Google Drive is, again, it's cloud-based storage. If you're familiar with Dropbox, it's very similar to something of that nature, where essentially you just save to a website and your information is there. So we're also going to increase the apps usage in the classroom. I'll talk about that in the next slide with our training. And again, we're building this 21st century classroom, and we're possibly looking at acquisition of more Chromebooks for the next couple of years. So the next big challenge was when we had kind of taken a look at this and said, well, let's make this jump to Google Apps. Well, how do you train a faculty member? I think we actually put together a decent training platform, and we provided a blended approach. So what we're doing is we're allowing in-house training as well as we're bringing outside resources to come in and train our faculty on how to administer Google Apps and how to use it in their classroom. One of these examples is a gentleman named Scott Rocca. He's coming in December 3rd. He's going to train about 35 staff members on how to basically use Google Apps. Essentially, he's basically customizing this training specifically for us. So we had sent out a form for everyone to fill out what they wanted to learn a little bit more about. We filled out that form, and that's what the training is going to be on. A couple of the things that we wanted to add is we wanted to differentiate the training. One of the big kind of concerns that we hear is that we have a blanket training for everything. So if you step into an auditorium like we are right now, I throw up a couple slides, and then at the end of the day, you're supposed to be an expert now. We all know that that's not the case. There is bigger learning curves for other individuals, so we want to differentiate that training. So what we're able to do now is we're able to provide smaller clinics, training on specific things, and depending on your level. We have beginner training classes, intermediate, more advanced, and then we have more app-specific training. If you want training on Google Drive specifically, we can provide that for you. If you want training on Google Forms, we can accommodate that for you as well. So some of the training that we've done to date so far is K-5 on October 29th. We had this in-service day. It was essentially the end of the afternoon. We provided 3 separate clinics for 40-minute blocks. I believe there was 8 trainees. There was 9 trainees that we did this for. It was a big success. We were have all the K-5 staff come in. They were able to sign up ahead of time for what clinics they wanted to do, what they wanted to learn, and then we were able to individualize that training for them. We did a very similar thing through 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. On November 5th, we did William Manning here. We kind of provide that individualized training here, Chromebooks, and did an intro to Google Apps, and then same thing on the 4th for the high school staff. So one final note, I just want to let everyone know some of the infrastructure changes that we've made over the past couple of years in preparation for PARCC. starting in 2012, we had decided to start updating the wireless infrastructure over at Ridge. This included putting access points, one in every classroom. We finally finished that up this summer. The summer of 2013, we updated our bandwidth from 200 megabits per second to 500 megabits per second. That should give us plenty of bandwidth to accommodate park testing. And then finally this summer, we did a large infrastructure upgrade, K through 8. We essentially have put a single access point in every classroom to accommodate for park testing. They're actually the newest level of access points. It's called 802.11 AC. We're very eager to wait the final release of the AC platform, which will be in 2016, which should provide a major increase in bandwidth in terms of wireless. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We're going to get that board forming questions first. Give us a second to get set up. You have to mic you first.
Okay, so we're going to start with some board member questions. Mr. McLaughlin is going to have a microphone for the board member questions. I'm going to take some notes, and then when the board members are finished answering their questions, Mr. Syatt will be in this aisle, and Mr. McLaughlin will be in this aisle. If you have a question, they'll bring a microphone over to you, and Mrs. McGowan will identify folks to answer or to ask their question, and I'll take some notes. We'll get a little Q&A posted, and I'm just so excited to have all these people here. This is great. So thank you so much for coming. This is so much fun. It's great. So we'll get started, and we'll start with the board member questions.
Great. So I'm going to preface my questions by making a comment based on the fact there's so many new people in the audience who haven't been to previous board meetings when we've talked about park testing. I think I speak for the majority of the board, if not everyone on the board, that we still have serious concerns about the amount of time this is going to take and the impact on instructional time. We also have serious concerns about the lack of clarity from the state on all the details of how it's going to be rolled out, combined with the fact that they keep changing things as they go along. So that's the overarching theme to all of this. But I'm just going to keep my comments and questions to the new information from tonight's presentation. First is the comment. It's the first time I've seen there's going to be some testing available at the beginning of the school year. I think there was mention of some sort of diagnostic testing. My comment is no thank you. Can we figure out this first and not even consider that until we see how this works and the impact on our instructional time? My question is regarding the actual testing online and the tools available that children are using. My first note was when I saw in the English language arts section, there's a word-like editing system to type stuff in, and I was thinking, are all of our elementary students familiar with how to use Word to type things in, because the intimidation factor might impact their ability to test successfully. And then you brought out that equation editor, and I thought, people are not even try to be able to use that. So how do we get our students comfortable with these tools for testing without using more instructional time? I'm really worried about that.
Right, we are as well. And so kind of what I alluded to is the fact that the difficulty we ran into, because we did this with pilot test in the spring, we thought, perfect, we have an idea, we have this equation editor, we can start thinking of how we're going to weave it in, and then PARCC came out and said, well, don't do that because it's going to change. We had feedback and we want to change it. And so now we all threw on the brakes and said, well, we're not going to bother, certainly not wasting time, because if we start trading in something that really may not be the case, why would we be bothering? So unfortunately, the reality is, and we just heard at the meeting at Washington Junction, which was a packed house with the State Department of Education last week, where they said, it'll all be released in January, and you'll have this practice test with the new equation editor and the new word editor, and then you'll be good to go. Now, of course, Matt and I looked at each other and went, well, well, that doesn't really give us a whole lot of time. So our goal that we talked about that afternoon was we really need to look at what's in place now, and as soon as they give us that window that we can start doing something, to be ready to hit it running. So that if we see, January 10th, they say, okay, here's this new equation editor and all these new things, so we can have a plan in place and how we'll approach it. Now, we learned this literally days ago, so, and that is difficult. I take some solace in the fact that everyone is learning it at the same time. There's not someone who's learning it before us. In fact, there was some scary statements at the meeting where people went, when is this park window open again? For school districts, we went, whoa, you're a little behind if you don't know when the park window is open. So I think we're in a good place as a district. How do we do it without wasting time? I think the big idea, and Nick has mentioned so many meetings we've had internally, is when kids are doing math and they're doing language arts, we should be integrating the tools that we see. And that's making them use the Chromebooks, having them writing prompts on the Chromebooks. And just like everybody else, we're really playing a catch-up game. It is a difficult prospect, especially year one, because everything is just happening. We're doing catch as catch can, trying to make things work. No one's thrilled with it. We're not happy with the implementation. We're doing really, as soon as the information comes to us, we're acting on it and making the best decision we can. So, are we going to waste time training them? We're not going to waste any time on what we currently know because we think it's going to change. Come January, we have to see what Park provides us and then make a decision as to how good is that tool? Can we weave it into any grade level, any instruction effectively without wasting time? And then make a decision from there. But I really can't give you a true answer to that. I don't know until January.
Back sort of in the beginning, you talked about the 2 testing windows, and so the first one is March, and you said it's 75% through the school year. But I did a little quick calculation, and in our school year, it's only about 60% through the school year. And then the second one in April, May is supposed to be 95% through the school year, but it's only about 80% through our school year. So I've been concerned because I feel like how will the students be ready for the content? Because we're really not that far through the school year because of our calendar. And I don't know, I don't know what the calendars are like in the other states.
Right, and what we know in some southern states, definitely
They start
earlier, and so that's to our detriment. I will tell you that PARCC gave us some guidance as to here are the topics to expect. Here's the Common Core. Here are the topics you'll expect to see on that first test. Here's the topics you'll expect to see by the second test. And I will not lie and say that Mr. Hunter and Mrs. Wolf and I'm like, oh boy, that's how do we get this all in? It's going to be difficult. You're right. We're working on a tighter timeline due to the start times in New Jersey. What effect do we have on that? Those are the windows that were given to us in the state of New Jersey.
I don't. And my other concern that was with it is, unlike with the NJS, where we're primarily dealing with the test itself, here we're dealing with how the students actually take the test on the computer, in addition to the content.
Absolutely. To be honest, I try to think positive, and I think when we beat the other states, we'll feel even better about it. We had less time, and we still beat them. I'm trying to take a positive approach to it, because I can't change it, so that's where we're at.
Just to add to that, we've been working to also address that other piece that you mentioned, because there are 2 pieces, right? There is preparing the students with the content knowledge and the skills they need to, that are going to be assessed, but there's also the testing platform itself, and are they going to be able to express what they know in the time with the tools that they're given. So we are working to address that. We have ramped up the keyboarding initiatives in the elementary schools to make sure that their proficiency with the keyboard is not going to be a limiting factor for them. That they need to be able to be proficient typing if they're going to write an essay with a keyboard in the given window. So Dr. Heinemann mentioned, having students practice. When they're practicing writing, we recognize that they need to be able to practice their writing using a computer, using a Chromebook, so it's not the first time they've ever had to do that. Because there are some behaviors that we've seen. The note taking, it's different. We ask students to write an essay with paper. They know I'm supposed to take notes, I'm pre-writing, I'm pre-planning, and when we give them a computer to do it, that seems to not occur to them, that we're supposed to do that. So there are some, hey, don't forget, you can pre-write, use your paper, and then type it in, and make sure they're familiar with all of those tools. So, you know, you mentioned the equation editor, that was one of the missing pieces. The field test that we did was the first time we ever seen it. So, you know, familiarizing students with that type of tool too, so that they can express their knowledge using that tool. It's not getting in the way. So we are working on this.
My question is about the device itself. I took some time to take one of the sample sections of the grade 11 park, and granted I'm not any of our kids, and you know I do my best, but I can't use a Chromebook. You can't even see the entire passage in the sample test. Is that different on the Chromebook? Because what I found was a lot of having to go left to right, top to bottom, to be able to see all the content when trying to answer the question. And when it comes to the questions, there could be, instead of the traditional 4 or 5 choices, 7 or even 8 multiple choice of options, and sometimes they're asking for more than one, you know, as many as are appropriate. It's difficult to even see them all at once, in my experience on the sample test. How does that work for the kids?
Well, that was a big question we had when we conducted the field test, was we had a fleet of Chromebooks, a small fleet. Before we purchased anything, we wanted to test out Chromebooks with the field test and see if the device itself presented an obstacle to the students. And so we solicited feedback from all the students. We asked them ahead of time, how many of you have used a Chromebook prior to this? We only actually had one student who had ever used a Chromebook prior to the field test. None of the students really at the end complained about the Chromebook itself. We had a couple of kids who said, hey, I really wish it was an iPad. Not for any sort of reason other than I like iPads better. So that didn't really seem to be an issue. And when we look at the sample park tests, like the one you took online, and we compare that to what it looks like on the Chromebook, we can go to the same sites and be seeing what it looks like in the field test. It's not really different. I mean, it's smaller. The font looks smaller, but it didn't seem to present an obstacle to the students. That was something we were sensitive to that we wanted to collect data on. The Chromebook itself didn't seem to be an issue. There was some difference to the touchpad. That was a little bit different because it didn't have 2 separate buttons. So we needed to familiarize students with that. You click the left side, it's the left button, the right side is the right button. It would be the same if we were using a MacBook or something like that. So the platform itself performed very well for the task. It actually runs in its own app. So it's not, you know, trying to run something that's not designed for Chrome OS. So it worked well for the field test itself.
Any questions on this side?
Thank you for presenting all of this today and being here. I have 3 sets of questions. The first one is the performance-based test and then the end of year. I know that you have a schedule for the end of year, but I'd like to believe you may consider optimizing the schedule for the end of year based on your experience of the performance-based to increase the instructional time. I hope that's in your schedule, your ideas, your priorities that you have, because as we've already said, instructional time is so critical. And I would like to see something learned, something improved between these 2 tests, and make sure that's part of this whole process. Right? So I say yes.
Yes, there's a month between those administrations, but obviously for something that's clearly, you know, obviously we can do that, we'll be looking into all those options.
And biggest thing is, as a board, we can maybe get hardware, data, bandwidth, you know, more substitute teachers if we need to, get whatever
Scheduling is a case of, limiting your agents, right? Something's gonna hold you up. Is it rooms, is it
Yeah, we
teachers?
figure out what it is and see the
Right.
rate limiting factor to see if we can improve it. So that was one thing. Second thing is the equity. Between Ridge High School and William Annan has the same number of Chromebooks, but William Annan has 3 grades, Ridge has 4 grades. Why is that?
Only three grades are tested.
I forgot it, thank you. And then, that was all this. And, you want your microphone back, I don't know. I'm very concerned about the Google, not because of the ease of use, but Google always says they have rights to the data. So if we're talking about students, if we're talking about teachers, if we're talking about important things, budgets, Google has a right to that data, is my understanding. So if we're going to switch to Google, has that been addressed with attorneys even? And I know this is nice. I know we use cloud computing. I know the students are already doing it for a lot of their group projects and just studying for exams. But when you bring in administration and teachers, having discussed it with legal point of view of who owns that data, or do they have copyrights, or I don't know legal terms, but do they have rights to do whatever they want with that data?
The legal terminology, to my recollection, is actually no. Google Apps for Educators is different than a public paid that you go through Google. It's compliant with all PORCA and FERPA laws, I believe, as well. They actually don't own that data.
Even emails?
Even emails, technically, it is our data. And that's kind of the upsell to Google Apps for Educators when they wanted to bring people on. Google is not here to, steal information from us and steal that metadata and, sell your product. They're really trying to get everyone on the platform and kind of, get us talking about what we're talking about now. And I think in the future, the kind of goal is to take Google Apps and compete head-to-head with Microsoft. So the more you use it in an educational facility, K through 12, then you go to higher ed, you go to college and you're using it in that facility. But hopefully when the students graduate, they're going to go into a company and say, you know what, I've used Google Apps this entire time. Let me purchase this Google Apps business product and implement that in the company.
So, Nick, I don't know, have you legally checked it with our attorneys? Because that is a big concern for me. Thank you. I was listening to him, not watching you. So, thank you. Was there?
I just really wanted to echo what everybody else is saying about the concern, about the amount of time that the test is going to take, and how our teachers are going to deliver a rigorous curriculum that they're left with. I know we have very little that we can do about it right now. I'm hoping that after this year, PARCC analyzes how the test was implemented, that we might be able to make some changes eventually.
I want to stand and just make a couple comments. I had cataract surgery a couple weeks ago or months ago, and I don't see that well. So, and I have notes on each one of the pages. I want to thank the administration and say I have great sympathy for them, because I think this is being jammed down our throats by the state of New Jersey and perhaps even above at the federal level. I believe education and to educate the children is to impart a body of knowledge, and how to use that body of knowledge. I think it's E.J. Hirsch Jr. I might be wrong on the E.J., but it's Hirsch Jr. And he argued that you can't be educated unless you have this broad body of knowledge. What's happened, I think, is that I believe this is trying to scuttle the existing education program that we have and to put us into the computer world. Because I think what's happening is all of a sudden the body of knowledge is so great that maybe we can't master it, and we're using the computer to look up things. And I see us almost destroying the education process and changing it. Make it, because if I want to know who Benjamin Franklin was, I'll go to the computer and I'll ask the computer who Benjamin Franklin. I don't have to know anymore. And that may be a little bit different in there, but I think there's something very drastic going on. And I don't know whether the educators at the national and state level are that smart. But I see a destruction process going on here. So that's the first thing I see. We haven't even practiced with this thing. It's coming out of nowhere. It's trust us, we'll have something great for you. Well, and then they force it on us, and we don't know anything about it. We haven't had any experience with it. I mentioned Herschel, or Hirsch rather, just come on. The best information so far, well, that's terrible, because we haven't even taken the test yet. Time on task is already a major problem in the district. Our 41-minute classes, or 40, whatever the time is in high school, is much too short. Our school year is short, and the testing is going to eat into all of that. Now, if you use the computer base for our knowledge, maybe there's an intelligent reason for doing that. But maybe I'm a little bit too old to understand it. I see tremendous change here, and I don't like it at all. The analysis, if I give you a paragraph to read and it's full of propaganda and a political view that I want you to understand, and education is not a knowledge base anymore, it's read this paragraph, master it, and then repeat it back answering the questions. That's a great way to impart a whole lot of falsehoods and ideology that has nothing to do with logic, because you're reading. It's not knowledge-based, it's the paragraph-based. And I'm having great difficulty with that, because I think it's a good way to indoctrinate and change public opinion based upon ignorance. Well, based upon what the politicians and leaders want us to believe. The examples given, we can't read them because they're so small. I'm not even sure with my eyes I can read them with magnifying glasses. So they aren't very... I did do a couple of the math problems. I'm not sure what's new about those, but the examples, my gracious. And we're going to spend a ton of time not just taking tests, but learning how to take the test, because they're different. I have a 10th grade grandson who called up with a Common Core question, and my gosh, it took me hours and I still didn't understand it. He'd say, well, you're just an old man. A couple more pages and I'll be done. I just have to get it was taking notes, and not that much of this. This is based upon testing, not learning. Now, maybe it is learning. Maybe the object here is to forget the body of knowledge, use the computer, and learn how to analyze it. I think the Wall Street Journal today, if not today, a couple days ago, talked about the dumbing down of Americans, because the computer is changing the way we work. We don't have to know much. The computer's going to do all the work. All we have to do is hit the right keys. You know, like, that's a hamburger. You don't even have to know how much it costs anymore. Maybe that's the world that we're building our education system for. I certainly hope not. I'm almost done. I'm not in favor of this at all. I wish there was a way to stop it, delay it, give us a chance to practice it, because I think it's another one of these things out of Washington and the administrations that is poorly thought out. It's the kids that are important, and we seem to be hung up on this process and the speed. I hope our kids are not going to take the brunt of this and come out an uneducated group of people because of this testing program.
Okay, before questions are finished, we'll open it to the audience. Please raise your hand Dr. Melissa and Mr. McLaughlin this one. Okay. We'll start with the closest woman on your right. Good evening.
I'm a proud parent of 4 children raised in the Baskin Ridge school system. I'm very proud to say I know our superintendent is a vice principal and has a very difficult job, as we all do, with raising our children, because everyone loves the children.
All right, let me interrupt you, please. This is for questions.
All right, this is my question.
But we're going to ask, let me just clarify this. I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is for questions for the administrators while they're here. Once the board goes back to the stage, we will still have a public comment section, which is when you can give all your comments. But while we have everyone assembled here, we wanted to just handle any questions that you had regarding the presentation and the park.
Okay, I apologize for not understanding the forum, but after 19 years in the school system, and as a former school teacher, I not only admire what the gentleman just said from the board before, but I'm extremely concerned about this park testing. I'm extremely concerned as a former teacher, and I don't know why this is coming up now, that we're all just really, I've heard about this, but it's a great concern to me, and it's a great concern to everyone else. And I just say, not only will I want my child to opt out, I'll homeschool my kid those days.
Right. Okay, everyone, please. These are for questions for the administrator, and we will have public comment after this, and everyone will have a chance to give us your comments regarding it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nancy D'Andrea. My son is actually new to district and new to public school, and he's never taken a standardized test before. And he's in Ridge High, and he loves it. My question is about the test. When you do the essay answering part, how or who grades that? Is it a computer-graded essay? Is it somebody reading the essays? How does this work?
The essays and the performance-based tests will be human scored. They're not scored locally. They will, they're scored by the park consortia or whoever they contract to do it elsewhere. So.
Okay, so we have humans grading children that, let's be honest, so we have Baskin Ridge children writing essays, but then we can also have children in a poverty-stricken area in, I'm going to make up the state area, Alabama, and yet we have the same, where the children, when they write their essays, might have a different way of looking at life. So how is, I still don't see how this is a good way to judge an essay when children are raised so differently around our country. So, there's no way to get around this. This is just how it's going to be. They're just going to be judged by humans on some standardized form to make sure that they wrote the correct theme in this sentence and they wrote the correct answer here and made sure that this keyword was here. Is that
now,
it?
just to be clear, currently with the New Jersey Ask, all those open-ended pieces and the essays that the children are writing,
Again, my son never took one.
those are all human scored at this state. So this is a simpler process, but it will be multiple states. So there is a rubric that they use for scoring. That's something that has been shared, that is in place, that our teachers are using with our children now in school, at Ridge High School. So the students are familiar with that format. I can only presume that other schools are doing a similar process.
Okay.
We don't, we
Thank
don't
you.
know.
It's an answer. I like it, but it's an
All right,
answer.
thank you. Question on this side?
I think it's important to say at this juncture that Pearson is evaluating those tests, and Pearson is the company that's hiring.
I'm sorry, do you have a question right
I
now?
just wanted to clarify that.
Right.
That was being made
Thank you.
by-
You can clarify that with her later. These are for questions.
They're not teachers, they're temps.
Mr. Hall, you
Yes.
introduced Mark before, and you were saying that I don't care about New Jersey, I care about the guys who live in this area. And we do really well on these NJS. So we do so well that we did so well on standardized testing, you were saying, that we had to go to more standardized testing, which confused me a little bit, number one. Number two, was it our college students that had taken remedial tests?
hear what you're saying.
And
So,
the second, there's one more question, I'm like,
okay.
give you both. The second question is, all this time we're taking to take the test, do we actually really know how long the test takes? Like, is it timed? I'm not talking about for IEP, I'm talking about for kids sitting down in the classroom. Do they stop it even if you're done or you're not? Like, do the computer shut off? Is it like 50 minutes, boom, done? Okay, so those are my two questions.
Okay, so there were a couple questions there. The first one was about our students' performance. So our students here in Basking Ridge performed very well on the state assessments that they have been given. And when we look at other assessments, some more national, like the AP tests, they tend to do very well on that. So keep in mind that the performance of Basking Ridge students is not what has triggered that Common Core movement, right? That's a national movement.
We don't need it.
We work for Burns Township Public Schools, we do not work for PARCC, so you know, we're.
I know, I understand, I'm not blaming, I'm just saying that I'm just trying to get what you're trying, it almost looks like you're trying to justify us doing it because we were doing so great that we just, you know.
Oh, no, well, then the way I said it was yeah, that wasn't my intention. So as far as college readiness, when we see information about that, we're looking at national or state information, right? It's very hard for us to get any sort of information on our own students' college readiness because that's their own private information. They would have to come back and say, hey, I took a placement test and this is how I did. And the kids don't do that, right? They go off to college and sometimes they come back and they tell us that, you know, they're having lots of fun and those sorts of things. But it's very hard to track that sort of data. So we're looking at national trends that are driving this change nationally, this shift in curriculum and standards and that sort of thing. So the state of New Jersey has adopted the Common Core state standards for language arts and mathematics as our state core content. So as a public school, we're then obligated, we're required to address those skills and core knowledge and those sorts of things. So that's where it's coming from. So then your final question was about timing. So we do know what the timings are for the test. So unless a student has a modification where they're entitled to extra time, when time's up, okay? So what we don't know is within that window. So we know, say, the literary analysis section for 3rd grade, we know what that time is. I don't have all those memorized, but let's say it's 75 minutes. So we know within 75 minutes they need to complete all of those tasks. What we don't know is how many of those tasks they're going to be confronted. We don't know that. We've never seen a live version of this test. We've only seen a field test in which they went back and reworked their timing because in some cases the students had too much time and in other cases they didn't have enough time. So we don't know what the individual time for any individual task is going to be. So I hope that answers your question.
You can't say it's 50 minutes, but actually.
So it's not, if it says 50 minutes and the children are still working, they don't just get to go on forever, right? At the end of the testing session, it's time is.
So if it's half, if it's a quarter,
Right, similar to how the testing is now.
Thank you. Is there someone on this side? The gentleman here, Mr. McLaughlin.
Thanks. I have two questions. The tool will be available for the teachers during the year either to practice or to use as a normal way of taking the test to the kids. And either the teacher and the kids get more familiar with the tool prior arriving to this test. The tool is available or it's not available?
It's not available yet. That's one of those things that's coming in January. So how large is that practice test? We don't know. Is it a giant database? We're not sure. Teachers will have access to it. We will have a demo site to work in that allow teachers to work in with their students. But what it looks like is,
I mean, having the tool being used by the teacher and the kids over the period of the year to test and be familiar with the tool, and outside this test period, right, teachers can engage that, also the kids can engage without this part thing.
Absolutely. So, well, once it's released, once they have released that assessment, that practice piece, then teachers will have access to it. But there's currently no other tools that we have access to that replicate PARCC that they can make use of. I'm
I
sure.
would like to try to make a test or
Right. I'm very sure that at some point, once everything's released and there's an administrative PARCC and people realize what it actually entails, I would imagine some company out there is going to make resources, just like they do now for NJASC and ASP and these other tests, to help students and teachers approach those tasks. So at some point, there might be a tool that we can make use of that teachers can utilize in the classroom. If it's a good tool, we'll consider that, but at this point, there's little or nothing.
And my second question, sorry, is IT. The devices are touch screen.
I'm sorry.
The devices are touch screen display because nowadays everyone has a finger using an Apple.
No, they're not such.
Okay, and how are we going to ensure that the people taking the test are the guys taking the test of user ID and password protection? I grew up with these systems, and they made in high school and college, people share user ID and password to pass the test. What's the mechanism and that happening?
Basically what will happen with PARCC is we'll upload a database of all of our students, and then PARCC will generate a unique ID for each student. And then that student can only use their unique ID if they put it into the testing windows, and they have to verify that that's me. So in my case, it would be Chris Barone, my password is 12345. I have to verify that my name is Chris Barone. I click OK, and I start the test. The only other way that would be plausible at that case would be if they literally would share another student in the room. But once the test has begun, one nice feature about the Chromebooks, they are in called kiosk mode. You can't do anything but test. You can't log out. You can't do anything. If you log out during the test session, that's it.
Yeah, the login credentials for each student are randomly generated for the test session, and they're only distributed to the students when they get their computer, then they get their login credentials. They log in, and then the teacher recollects that document. That's a secure document that gets counted at the end of the session. The children aren't allowed to leave until all of those documents are accounted for, just for that exact reason. We don't want, I guess someone were unscrupulous, they would leave and have someone else take the test for them, my big brother or something, take the test. So that it really, there's a lot of security around the control of those credentials.
Is there a question on this side? Sean, why don't you take one that hops out there for you? There you go.
Thanks. You mentioned a lot that this test was online, test was online. Are you at all hinting that parents should be reviewing these test questions with their kids in spare time?
Oh, no, I was just trying to make a point that these were not some secret stash of administrator-only items that we have that we're privy to. Everything that's released is publicly released, so there's nothing yet that is a teacher-only tool, administrator-only tool. These are just tools that the PARCC consortium has released, or New Jersey ASC and New New Jersey have released to the public. So that's what they were drawn from. Just there's no agenda.
And the another question, sorry. I have all faith in you guys. My father's a retired superintendent. I know you were hired to tackle this task, and you'll do it morning, day, and night, get it done. I have hopes, and I'm sure our Basking Ridge or Vernon Township will
Is there a
succeed.
question?
There is, if you just bear with me. And we'll be patting you on the back. To say that we're judging our town nationally when not all states are part of this doesn't sound accurate. At the end of it, if we do and when we do achieve our goal successfully
Please get to your
doing
question.
this, who is the winner? With the time that these kids from 3rd grade on up are spending taking this test in front of these devices, during times that they could be sick, whatever, who is the winner when we're losing time to our curriculum? You guys get to
I'm not sure that's a
All right, let's move on to, could you please ask questions that are more factual based?
The experts, can you sound me on why
No,
our town
I'd like to hear from Christina back here in the back in the middle. She's
Can
got her
I actually
hand
ask my third question?
No, we need to move on.
All right, my third question is, we have all these devices that are being passed around. Sounds crazy, but how are we disinfecting these things? We're having multiple children using these From January, we're going to start all the way to May.
Okay, is there an answer for that?
It might sound like a crazy question, but I just had a kid be sick for a week.
The Chromebooks, depending on the building, they're divided up. We have kind of owners of the Chromebooks, and we have discussed this with them, that you can use disinfecting wipes. You can essentially, just as long as you're not spraying something on a Chromebook directly, you can wipe them down, wipe the keyboards down. It'll disinfect the keyboards.
Okay, thank you. Christina?
Hi, thank you. I just want to confirm that we will not have quarterlies. Is that correct? Only quarterlies will be given are the social studies, science, CP calculus, and a little bit classes, and these will replace the quarterlies. Is that correct?
And for the parking period?
I'm sorry?
Or no quarterlies, what you're talking about is
Right.
Right.
So these will be the assessments then?
Correct.
Okay. And then the 2016, 2017, 2018 graduates, will they be able to use an alternative test for graduation, or is this going to be the graduation requirement? Because I read something that Heskey wrote that they're going to use the SAT potentially, and I just wanted to find out if that was accurate.
There are, you go to the New Jersey Department of Education's website, there are alternative assessments. You're right, SAT is one of them, ACT is another. There are several more listed on there that would count as a graduation requirement for students. That's still something that's kind of out there as an unknown. That came late because at one point we thought this might be, then there was nothing, and then that was added. So we're just waiting. The best word is exactly what we find on the Department of Education website, which is yes, those tests will be able to count in lieu of PARCC for graduation.
Okay. And the field test, is that also done at elementary school, and did it include a large cross-section of abilities? But I'm 95% sure that my son is going to bomb this. My child. So I just want to know if you get a lot of feedback. Did you test my kid? Because I don't think you could type in those bold italic things would probably, or the equation thing. What kind of groups did you pull together for the field test?
So I can speak to that. So in district, we had sample grades in our elementary grade that tested was 5th grade. We had two classes of students who took the language arts portion, and we had two who took the mathematics portion. So 2 classes took each of those field tests.
So a whole class took that?
Whole class.
Okay, and in all elementary schools or just?
Nope, they were randomly selected.
Okay, so across all 4 elementary schools?
We were given a protocol to randomly select it, and those were Oak Street and Liberty Corner.
Okay, so why my son didn't come home and tell me on the test, because he could see it. And then, so we've got 15 delayed openings at Ridge, 18 delayed openings at William, and 10 days of testing at the elementary school. I am obviously concerned about the amount of lost time, especially because it's prior to AP tests and SAT subject matter tests. Is there anything that's going to be done? I know that it's too late this year, but is anything going to be done to make sure that in the future we're not losing a significant amount of instruction time? Because you can't tell me that 15 delayed openings will not have a massive impact on anyone taking an AP test or SAT subject matter test in high school.
So as was mentioned before, it's a matter of resources. So the testing schedule is essentially the testing schedule that you were presented is the most efficient way to get through that we can do with the number of devices we have for testing students, the number of rooms, the number of staff. So that, I mean, if we had more rooms, we would get through it faster. If we had more staff, we'd get through it faster. If we had more devices, we would get through it faster, but it's a balancing act. So that's the most efficient way for us to get through the amount of testing. There's a reality in the amount of testing where the students have to be involved in. So you're talking about, between the 2 testing administrations, you're talking about at the elementary level, about 10 hours of testing, and it increases as it moves up, with the exception of at the high school, the mathematics testing is linked to the course the students are taking. So, we're going to have 11th graders who have passed, it ends at Algebra 2. So that's where you see a drop-off, but otherwise...
And would we ever be looking at potentially shifting these are huge changes that have to be made on something if we're planning
readiness thing. So are we talking about potentially moving our school year up ahead of Labor Day to account for the fact that SAT subject matter?
Okay, let me interpret that. The school year is defined by contractual agreements with our union, so at this point, we're not looking at any shifting in the change. All right, I want everyone to please, I'm sorry, Christine, you've had enough questions. I'm going to call this at 9 o'clock. I'd like people to have one question, and we'll try to get as many in as we can. Mr. Wicks?
Is the student's personal information encrypted at all levels so that it's based on what students do, not what an individual students do? I'm very worried about privacy, child privacy, and how it may track through his life. I know Mr. Shore asked about the cloud and Google, but what about up at the level of the national level where PARCC has it? Do they know him as an individual? Or do they know him as a X number 577? Are the children's personal data encrypted?
I know that the encryption from the test to PARCC or Pearson is encrypted. That's an encrypted tunnel. Anything past the firewall, I don't speculate that. If it's encrypted on the physical data store, I really don't. It could be either, and test information.
Oh, you said they sign in with a
Yeah, they sign
encrypted name?
Yeah, when they sign in, they open up that session, that's an encrypted tunnel, that's using HTTPS. Just like you do with the checkout for Amazon or something of that nature, that's an encrypted session going on, but when it hits their servers, I can only speculate that it's encrypted on the server.
Okay, one question. Right here, the block number.
As with the technology group, I have two questions. Or maybe I'll just throw them out there and you can answer them.
One question.
Well,
At public comment, you can, when we open public comment, you can give further questions and we'll get them. When I open public comment, you can give further questions if you have them and we'll try to get them on the Q&A for the website. So one question.
First of all, I want to know what amount of resources are we budgeting for? You said that you're going to have additional testing, you're pulling teachers out of classrooms to give them this additional upgrading of the test that you're going to get the final details in January of. So how much more are we paying for this computer consulting? How many consultants are we going to have on board when this test is being administered? I'd like to know, I know I saw on the website that we've already expended $927,000 for the Chromebooks and the wireless infrastructure upgrade. Now, how much more are we expending for consultants to be there during the testing period, to train teachers, etc., and substitutes to put through this structure of giving exams? And the other thing that what we're also talking about is that we were limited in computers, but I understand that you also have the option to do this by pen and paper, so that maybe you could do the lower grade by pencil and paper as opposed to computers. We didn't have enough.
So the pencil and paper accommodation, that would be an accommodation for a child with special needs. So that would be something that we would have to get approval. New Jersey has opted to, as a state, do the...
Please let him answer now your question.
So as a state, New Jersey has opted for computer-based testing. It's true that in some states, with schools that have block scheduling, that they have done I guess it was a fall block paper-based administration. But it's a special accommodation for us for select children, so not as a district to do that. So, and then you're...
I'm sorry, please let him answer. This isn't a back and forth argument.
So if they are, then it's... Okay, I'm not aware of Berkeley High School in paper-based testing. Okay. And your earlier question was about consultants. So during testing, and the practice testing that we referred to, that's all done in-house. So that would be training that we're doing with staff in-house. Practice administrations that we're setting up in-house. And as far as I'm aware, we're not bringing in consultants during testing.
I think the slide that you were referring to, sorry, Matt, was the one that I had about the consultant coming in. That's for Google Labs training specifically. That's completely separate from Park. Just to come in to do the blended learning training for staff members.
So we're not paying any extra subs or anyone else? We're not budgeting any more money for this? That's it?
All right, is there another question? No.
Folks, we're really doing our best here, but it would really go a long way if you could respect one question per person. What I can do is, we do have an agenda to continue tonight, and we certainly want to get you the information that you would like to have on this. So what I can do is promise you that we'll set up a Q&A, and I will write a letter to you that has an email address specific to PARCC. It'll probably be, how about parc@bernardsboe.com, Chris? Is that a good email address? Okay. So what I could just ask so that we could, keep going but not lose the dialogue is if we could just hang in there for a few more questions until 9 o'clock, and then I'll send you a letter with this Q&A in it as well as an email address that you could write future questions to, and we will keep the Q&A updated, okay?
Thanks. Michelle?
This is kind of an administrative type question. Specifically, what is the Board of Ed administration doing to oppose PARCC? And the second part of the question is, what will happen to students who do not take the test? How will the district manage if 200 students don't take it? What are you guys going to do?
At some point, I just can't keep up with the typing. I'm trying. Okay, so I think what I heard was, so what are we going to do if students just decide not to take the test? I think we spoke about this a little bit at the last board meeting. I can tell you that the state has made it clear that there's no opt-out. The state is not going to give us instructions to say, here's what you can do. People are free to opt out because it's a state requirement. It's a legal requirement that the students are supposed to be tested. There's no child left behind law that says that we have to have some test. Now, New Jersey's chosen this test, so they're not going to turn around and say to everybody, okay, we know the law requires us to test, but here's how you can avoid being tested. Obviously, I can't make you send your child to school if you don't want them to take the test. Then I guess you can keep them home. But our job is to do what the law requires. So if students come to take the test, we're going to test them. If a student sits down and, I'm not going to take the test and sits there, well, then we have to code the test appropriately. The student didn't take the test. I mean, I can't make it. There's no direction that I can give you to say, you know what, you're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to send your child to school. This is what it is. We've always had a test that we've had to administer. They're changing the test this year. I know there are a lot of things that are unpopular about it. There's a lot of things that we're not thrilled about. And I heard the question, well, what are you going to do about it? What am I supposed to do about it? I mean, what we can do, excuse me, everyone had a chance to speak. I don't have an answer to the question. Okay. So what we can do is we can certainly express to the state all of the challenges that we're having to get this done. We can say, look, here are the issues that we're confronted with. It's taking up a lot of class time. We have major concerns about that. Our public has concerns about it. Our board has concerns about it. And we're concerned that we're going to lose a lot of instructional time to administer the test. I mean, look, 9th and 10th graders didn't have to take this test last year. I was writing letters to the community about this last year because I know this is a big issue, okay? But this is what we're being told